What is up, everyone, and welcome back to another video. So as you probably know, box fights are absolutely crucial in Fortnite nowadays, and that's why in today's video what I'll be doing is a full guide on how to box fight like a pro. I'll be going over various things like how to approach pushing people in box fights, how to handle when you're the one getting pushed, and I'll also be going over a ton of different scenarios and tricks you can use along the way. Before we get into it though, be sure to drop a like on the video if it helps you out, and consider subscribing as well if you want to see more content just like this in the future. And as you may know, I'm actually offering coaching now, so if you're looking to do paid one-on-one coaching directly with me, then I'll have the link to that near the top of the description where you can sign up and we can get started. Of course, my videos are always going to be free for you guys. I want to help out everybody, but if you want specific guidance and strategies tailored to you, then the coaching is a great option as well. But once again, guys, the link is going to be near the top of the description. And finally, guys, if you want to show some extra support, then consider using code Teckoh in the item shop. It's 100% free and it seriously helps your boy out a ton. But with that said, and without further ado, let's get into today's video. Alrighty, guys, so here we are in creative now, and basically the first thing I'm going to be showing you guys is pushing another player. So this is basically all of the most common things that I see beginner players do that pro players actually don't do, and how to kind of fix everything and obviously play more like a pro player in box fights. So the first super common mistake that I see when somebody's pushing another player in a box fight is going straight up to the box and just, you know, pickaxing and trying to push and whatnot. And obviously that makes you super vulnerable to just get edited on and boxed up and anything like that. So basically, guys, from the perspective of the person inside the box, you're basically just sitting there pickaxing in the open. You're super easy to edit on, super vulnerable, and whatever, they can do whatever. And as you can expect, being vulnerable to getting edited on and anything like that is not going to be good. So what you want to do, guys, is you want to push in a protected way. So there are a couple of ways to do that. For the first two, I'm going to be showing you horizontal ways, and then I'll be showing you how to push from the top of a box. So the first way that I like to push a box is pretty much to set up diagonally from their box, just like this. You can set up another full box next to them, or you can kind of just set up like this and anything along these lines. And basically what you want to have here is the right hand peek. So that way, no matter what they do, you can always have a peek on them. So for example, if I'm just pushing their box, I'm super easily able to get a cone in, and basically I have this right hand peek. So no matter what I do, I'm able to peek around this side. So obviously, guys, from this angle, you have this wall in between, so it makes it really easy for you to put pressure and pre-fire or just avoid when they actually try to edit on you. So overall, this type of push just puts you in a much better situation, allows you to have a right-hand peek nonstop, and it's basically OP. Alrighty, guys, so the second way you want to approach a box in a box fight is basically to go up and place a ramp next to your opponent's box. So in this situation, as you can see, you're pretty much able to just chill up here. If your opponent makes an edit or tries to make a play on you, you can easily jump up, pre-fire, and all sorts of things like that. The only thing you guys want to avoid in this situation is going too far down the ramp so your opponent can basically box you up, go for piece control, and you're basically screwed. But overall, guys, that definitely beats going down here and just trying to spray into your opponent's box and getting absolutely clobbered. And lastly, for these tips, guys, the last thing we're going to be going over is how to approach a box from the top, kind of like this. So obviously, when you're approaching a box and you kind of just start pickaxing, your opponent's super easily able to edit on you and just get an easy shot. And as you guys can see, that's definitely not something you want to happen in your fights. So instead of doing that, guys, what you basically want to do is place a wall in front of you when you're pushing the box head on. And that way, if they do try to edit on you, say you're taking their stuff and they try to edit on you, it's super easy for you to either pre-fire or just reset your wall. So that way, guys, you're basically able to apply pressure super safely. And if they try to make an edit on you, you're safe. Otherwise, you can just go for piece control, try to box them up and everything you would do. So essentially, instead of just going like this and trying to like do whatever you can and getting edited on, you want to be protected behind a wall and you're in a much better spot. Now, the other option to push a box from the side is actually something that I really like to do and often catches people off guard, and that's to go out to the side like this. So basically, you'll want to be facing it head on, place a wall to your right, and from here, you're in a much better spot to get an angle and kind of spray through and all things like that. So your first option in this situation is obviously just to spray through and try to get the wall and things like that. And something I really like about this is that if your opponent tries to make a play, you have such a beautiful angle to pre-fire them no matter where they go, as you can see. So this setup on top definitely puts you at a big advantage, and basically you can go for piece control, do whatever you want to do. Also, I find it hilarious how I can't get this person's wall despite them being on EU. Just like that, guys. And the really beautiful thing about this angle, guys, is there's literally nowhere where you can't shoot your opponent. As you can see right here, my opponent's not going to be able to see me pretty much, and I'm able to get a clean shot on them. If they're in the back of the box, I still have a right-hand peek, and basically no matter where they are, you have a right-hand peek on them. So if you're approaching from the top of a box, definitely either place the wall in front and approach that way, or head out to the side like this and do that. But overall, guys, that's going to do it for that part. So the next thing we're going to be talking about for approaching a box is going to be going for piece control. So ultimately, guys, when you're pushing a box, your main goal should be to get a code in their box and get them in a position where you have a right-hand peek and they don't. So the most common way I like to do this is I'm pushing a box however I want to push it. So for example, I'm on the ramp, and my goal here, the perfect situation, is basically to get their wall, to edit down like this, get a cone in their box, and obviously just go from there. Because in this situation, if you have this peak like that, there's really not much they can do, especially if you're behind cover. And their only way to get out of this situation is for them to turn towards one of their walls and have to edit out facing away from you, and obviously that's a free shot. So overall, guys, in a perfect scenario, you would always be getting a cone in somebody's box and getting a right-hand peek on them. And the second piece control move that I recommend you do in fights, and these are basically the only two, at least when you're pushing somebody, is to head really close to the wall. And basically, if you get the right angle, as you can see right here, you can get a ramp right above their head. So from there, your opponent's going to be in a really weird spot. Obviously, they typically edit out, and obviously you can just go ahead and go for any other piece control and whatever you want to do. I also need to stop saying obviously so much. But yeah, guys, those are ultimately the two main things I recommend you do in terms of piece control when you're pushing somebody. It does get a little bit more complicated when somebody else is pushing you, but we'll get into that later. So the next aspect of pushing another person's box is actually to catch them lacking. What I mean by that is basically countering their edit attempts and basically pre-firing them. So for example, if I'm on the top of a ramp, this is something you'll see me do all the time. If my opponent tries to edit on me, which they often will, I can easily just shoot them like that. And the same thing applies when you're pushing from the top. If you're trying to edit on somebody and they try to edit on you, you can just pre-fire them and wait for them to mess up. Just like that. So basically, guys, during a box fight, you should constantly be looking for opportunities to catch your opponent. Whenever they're trying to edit on you, basically they're giving you an opportunity to hit them. Sometimes in fights, you basically just have to wait for your opponent to mess up, and that's something that you should really consider when you're box fighting. But ultimately, guys, that's about all there is to know when it comes to pushing another box. From this point, it's pretty much going to come down to your mechanics and your ability to predict your opponents and know what they're trying to do. And most of that is really going to come down to experience. So with that said, guys, for this second part of the video, what we're going to be talking about is getting pushed. So in these situations, I'm actually going to be the person that's getting pushed by another person. So the first part of this section is going to be countering from each angle. Your main goal when you're getting pushed is basically going to be to counter your opponent and see what they do. On the first hand, when you're pushing another player and you're the one obviously approaching, you have a lot of flexibility in that sense to kind of go for different angles and do different things. But when you're the one getting pushed, it makes things a lot more difficult, and you kind of have to play against your opponent rather than playing for angles and whatnot. Hopefully that makes sense. Basically, it's more based on your opponent's actions rather than yours. So the first super common scenario that you're going to run into is somebody pushing you straight from the side just like this. And the most common thing I like to do, easy peanut butter edit just like that, maybe box them up and anything like that. When somebody's pushing you, one of your biggest goals should basically be to get piece control on them and to turn around the fight. So for example, if I'm getting pushed by somebody on a ramp just like this, I should be trying to get a cone above them, box them up, and things of that nature. I need to stop missing so much, but hopefully you get the point. Basically, and the main idea with this entire section of the video is to turn around the pressure ASAP. The longer that your opponent spends being the one pushing you is the bigger advantage they're going to have in the fight. So you want to turn that around as soon as possible. So the second part of this is when somebody's trying to pressure the top of your box. And what I like to do in this situation is basically try to go for a counter. So I typically like to just edit up like that, place a wall in front of them, and catch them like that. Another option that you have is simply to just start building up and obviously try to get piece control on them like that. There are a ton of different situations, but your goal should basically be to either take a super safe peek or to go for piece control. And essentially every time you're getting pushed in a box fight, that should be your goal. So hopefully those gave you some good examples as to what piece control you can actually do in both situations. But ultimately it's really going to be situational, and your main goal should be either to get piece control or get a clean shot off. And that way you're actually able to turn around the fight. So the second part of this is something that is super overpowered and I literally see barely anybody doing except for pros, and that's pre-firing through walls. So your goal here is basically to counter an opponent that's trying to push your wall, and your goal is basically to pre-fire them when they're actually pressuring you. So the way this typically works is with a pickaxe, and you can see right at the end of their second swing when you're actually taking the wall, there's a tiny little bit of time there where you can actually shoot through. So for example, you can see it right here. I'll do it real quick, just like that. So what you're doing here is basically taking advantage of the tiny little bit of time between the point where the wall is broken and where it's replaced. You can also do this when somebody's shooting you with an SMG for like a box away or something like that, for example. You can kind of get the premise from this. I am missing pretty much non-stop, but you can kind of see what I'm doing. Basically, right when the wall breaks, I'm trying to go for a shot. That way they can't replace it. In theory, it's a pretty simple concept, but it actually is really, really difficult to learn this. The biggest thing that I'd recommend you do, guys, is try to practice the timing of that in creative. But yeah, guys, that pre-firing tip is pretty much the easiest way to turn around the pressure in your fights. And the last aspect of getting pushed in a box fight, guys, is something I really want to mention, is making space for yourself. When you're getting pushed in a box fight like this, it's really easy for you to kind of just stay in the same box and your opponent's putting pressure on you and they're basically able to get piece control on you and basically destroy you. For example, if I'm in this one box and my wall gets taken, mistaken, I get a cone put in my box or a ramp or anything like that, I'm really not able to do much. So instead, what I would recommend you do in a box fight kind of like this is basically try to make extra room for yourself. For example, you can do a 2x1 or anything like that. Something I really like that you can do in these situations, especially when you have a 2x1 like this, is cross box peeks. What I mean by this is basically, since you have all this room and you're on defense, your opponent can be pushing one wall, because obviously they can only really be pushing one wall at a time, and you can actually make super easy counter moves. For example, one that I really like to do is edit out just like this, box them up, edit like that. In smoother fashion, basically they're pushing that side of my box, and in the meantime I just do that. Let's just pretend I hit my shot there. And from here, that's a super easy way to reverse the pressure if you have a 2x1. And honestly, having a 2x1 or basically any more mobility than just a 1x1 like this, it's going to make it so much easier for you to go for counter plays, and it's just going to make your life so much easier in box fights. But overall, guys, that's going to be about it for getting pushed. Overall, when you're getting pushed in a box fight, your main goal the entire time should be to do whatever you can to turn around the pressure. You want to spend as little time on defense as possible in a box fight, and basically through the tips that I've given, you should be able to turn around the pressure really fast and get into an offensive position. But overall, guys, that's going to do it for this entire guide. With all that said, guys, that's going to wrap it up for today's video on how to box fight like a pro in Fortnite. Overall, with all the tips and strategies in this video, you should be well on your way to winning way more box fights in Fortnite. If you found this video helpful, then be sure to drop a like on it and consider subscribing as well if you want to see more content just like this in the future. And as always, guys, if you want to help out a little bit extra, then consider using code Teckoh in the item shop. It's 100% free for you, and it seriously does help me out a bunch. And finally, guys, if you're looking to do direct one-on-one coaching, then the link to that is going to be near the top of the description. With that said, though, thank you all for watching this video, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye for now.